Evet efendim, our next session, State of Travel and Tourism, provides a data-driven overview of the current trends, challenges and opportunities shaping the global travels and tourism industry. Now I would like to invite Dariha Choudhry, Associate Partner at McKinsey, with us today. Ms. Choudhry, please, welcome. Ms. Choudhry, thank you very much. Please.
Thank you.
The stage is yours.
Thank you. Great. Good evening, everyone. I'm Dariha Choudhry, and I'm an associate partner with McKinsey. And I focus my work on tourism and tourism investments. So firstly, I'd like to thank the Tourism Investment Forum for inviting me here and giving us a chance to present our findings on tourism and hospitality. What I'll be walking you through today is what we see as trends in the tourism and hospitality sector. I'll walk us through a few key themes. First, looking at where a traveler is coming from. We'll then look at who are these travelers, what are their preferences, with a double click especially on luxury. And then lastly, we'll also talk about destination readiness and what does this mean for destinations like Istanbul, Antalya, Bodrum, and the likes as well. And I'll then tie all of this back to what are some key investment themes that can be approached. Sorry, let me just fix. So in terms of who are the travelers today, right? Historically, there has been a question saying, are we serving a domestic market or are we serving an international market? And what you'll see is that, while today domestic is about 75%, it pretty much stays quite similar also for 2030 when you look at key markets and say where are key tourists coming from, right? This is roughly around 70% for 2030. The growth for some of the markets, such as like China, is around 12%, right? And they're expected to overtake the US market by 2030. After domestic market, the second part that emerges is that a lot of these travelers are looking for intra-regional travel. And the intra-regional is something that was referred to in some of the earlier sessions as well, on saying, for where Turkey is placed, if you think of the Middle East and North Africa and those regions, there are a lot of synergies. There are travelers that you can capture. You can capture travelers from Europe, Africa, and Middle East, which is quite a geostrategic and unique position to be in. What we found from the research is that travelers prefer a travel time of around 4 hours, plus or minus a bit. And that's really what you're looking at as your core segment of travelers and who you're looking to serve. I think in addition to that, in terms of who these travelers are, there was some discussion around saying, China's a growing market, India's another growing market, Eastern Europe is also a growing market, right? And I think if you, again, contextualize this in the case of Turkey, this is a unique position because you can capture the travelers that go across for where you are today. You can leverage synergies such as those with Turkish Airlines and the travelers that transit through Pegasus and so forth, right? So that is a little bit of how you can also action some of this. I think two of the key growth markets come from the Indian travelers that are roughly going to increase by about 9% as growth, and then the Chinese travelers as well, which is about a 7% growth, right? Then, if we say that these are the travelers, what is it that they're looking for? The first view that we took around this was who is the generation and what are their preferences? And what you'll see is that Gen Z and millennials are a big group where travel is almost a necessity and not just a luxury in their behavior patterns. This also ties back to what matters to these travelers. And essentially, experiences are increasingly important. This is probably not new to many of you in this room. It has been spoken about in the earlier panels as well. But travelers are increasingly looking for an ecosystem to come together, What does it mean to go to a resort? Can I couple this with an adventure? Can I couple it with, exploring something new? There was a discussion around vineyards, right? So, and that's an experience. That's what your emerging travelers are increasingly looking for. And then if we look at, if you take all the different reasons for travel, the history still stands true. So the largest segment is still sun and beach, right? So that is the core segment of travelers and why they travel. After sun and beach, you have culture and authenticity. And I think this is one position to take into account, especially for differentiation with other markets. Because culture can't be created overnight, right? And the authenticity is something that travelers increasingly prefer, they look for, and that also means that the preservation needs to happen for these. Sorry. In terms of, how younger generations prioritize their trips, they prioritize new destinations. Some maybe not so great news for many of us in the room is there is lesser loyalty in the younger generation and brand stickiness, which means that there's a higher push for innovation, what can you get out of your trip, and so forth. They're also sometimes cost-conscious, especially for younger generations. However, they spend a larger share of their wallet on trips itself and travel. And this is, going back to, if you look at the spend, right? The Gen Z and millennials spend about 29% of their income on travel itself, right? On experiences, again, the splurge is much higher for Gen Z and millennials as well. This means that, while we can stay in our today, as you prepare for your future of travel and who your travelers will be, there is a shift in behavior that impacts how we think of the core business itself. In addition to this, if we look at the reasons for travel, the historical reasons still stand true, which is that, these are mainly driven by saying, I want to travel to see friends and family. This is what also drives a lot of the domestic tourism specifically, and is coupled by international tourism as well. If we then look at, there's a lot of questions on marketing. How do we actually bring travelers across? How do you have the conversion? And one of the findings was that actually the greatest influence mechanism is recommendations from your family and friends. It's not the influencers, it's not just the marketing on social media, it is still word of mouth and recommendations of someone you trust. Which means that the actual experience that you deliver to someone who goes to the hotel or goes through an adventure experience or a wellness resort and so forth is what really relates back and leads to more conversions, right? If someone comes back and says, I had a great experience, I would highly recommend it versus not. This then brings me to, what does luxury travel mean today? And I'll summarize this in terms of 3 key themes. I think the first one is that the luxury landscape itself is shifting. And what that means is, historically, your luxury travelers were high net worth individuals, right? However, today, your luxury travelers are also aspirational luxury, which means that if you were to break them down in terms of income segment, while the larger portions remains between the 1 to 5 million net worth in terms of dollar terms, you actually have your largest portion coming from aspirational luxury. So, it's someone like me who will still want to go to the Amman Hotel on a holiday and treat myself, right? It doesn't necessarily have to be that you are an ultra-high net worth individual. And that's a big change that, again, goes back to who are the travelers. So it's your Gen Z, your millennials, who might not have that net worth today, but they have the behavior of a higher net worth individual, right? This also then ties back to the age groups and who is looking to travel. The largest segment that you'll see that spends on travel peaks is between the ages of 40 to 60. That's also when people have more ability to spend on luxury travel. However, the fastest growth that you'll also see is one of the segments is between 30 to like under 40, right? So between the 30 to 40 segment. This is again those who may have some work experience, they've had some success and they now want to go and spend, right? In addition to this, if we look at your current high net worth individuals and those luxury spend, where is it coming from? The highest growth that you'll see is China, which is almost double of the US, which in your current market is the largest share, right? So circa 2030, you will have an increasing amount of Chinese tourists, which means there's also adaptation for what is that luxury offering. The timing at which you offer it, right? The holiday periods differ between those cultures and so forth. In addition, I think going back to the earlier point of, what makes travelers, in fact, take a trip, it is still highly dominated by traditional reasons, which are to see friends and family, right? There are travelers who go for adventure and experiences, but it's a much smaller portion as compared to the core reason being sun and beach, I want to take a rest, I want to pamper myself, or I want to visit my family and friends. In addition to this, I think we spoke about wellness tourism at some point earlier today as well, is while travelers are looking for experiences, they're also looking for a break, right? And you can tie this back to behavioral patterns of saying our lives are increasingly busy and we need some rest. But even luxury travel is increasingly focusing on what is the new product that they can bring in the market related to wellness, but take wellness a step further and start thinking about longevity. And the shift from wellness to longevity is also about repeat travel and tourism related to this, right? I think this is a space that, for Turkey, you have medical tourism as a revenue stream. Tying that with wellness and longevity is another one that you can explore, especially given the markets that are around you. If you tie this back to, the 4-hour, 5-hour flight distance, those are markets of various income levels, right? So the cost sensitivity comes into play as well. I think in addition to that, as we look at like different operators, brands, what you'll see is that, today about 25% of your properties are managed by chains. However, in the pipeline, you have about 76% of new properties that are coming on board are by hotel chains, right? This is also driven by who investors as well as, both owners and operators are looking for simpler points of contact, looking for portfolios so they can get synergies as they enter into this. And then, if you now have so many travelers, you know who they are, and you know what they're looking for across segments. There's a question of saying, are we ready as a destination itself? Is the world ready to cater to as much tourism, right? And what we looked at as part of our research was, what are the cities in terms of their improvement as a destination across multiple metrics of infrastructure, reliance on tourism, the experience offerings that you have, and many others. And what you find is that there are destinations that have made progress, that have made significant progress between 2017 to 2023, where we conducted the research. But there are also destinations that have gone backwards or have actually lost their position or their edge in that ranking, right? Cape Town is an example of that. Toronto is another example of that. There are multiple reasons that feed into the destination's readiness itself, right? There is a view of this being, you may have over-tourism, you have a lot of tourists coming in, but then you don't have the offerings ready for them. Or there is a strain on the infrastructure itself. I don't know if it's included here, but maybe I'll just talk through it. So, and I think in terms of destination readiness, a few of the key aspects that we say is, the first is you need to have a tourism-ready workforce, right? The amount of people that need to be trained, It's a service-oriented business. The experience matters. The word of mouth is related to who you will interact with, right? And having that workforce and investing in that is essential. I think the second part is there is so much data out there today, right? If we were able to actually tie back all the different inputs between, which airline you traveled, how much of a stopover you take, how did you travel from the airport to your hotel, and so forth. There's so much you can tell about a traveler itself. And it's really about saying that we need to tie all of this data together and then manage our visitor flows to say, which is the segment that we can bring in during the peak versus which is the segment that we can bring in during our shoulder and our off-peak season as well, right? And then there's dynamic pricing involved behind all of this. And then lastly, there's also looking at multiple levers around funding, but also preserving your authenticity, which is preserving your culture and your natural heritage, because that is really what will give you an advantage over other destinations as well. If we were to plot all of this across matrix, as McKinsey, we do love making a 2x2 and try to simplify our lives and just put everything on a block. So, if we look at number of visitors and we look at the visitor management systems that are in place, you'll see that various destinations fall in various areas, right? You could, as Turkey, maybe many of the destinations fall between an A and a B, depending on which specific destination we are looking at, right? So many of your sun and beach destinations would be overloaded during their peak season, but will have a longer period of very low occupancy and so forth as well. And then you have others that are more actively managed. But the shift required from one of these matrices to the part of the matrix to the other is to ensure that you can actually take 2 or 3 key levers and then action them. In the case of Turkey, that may mean really enhancing your visitor experience, because if you compare it to other destinations, that's the differential. Looking at how do you actually bring all this data together. It can be a unified platform used by multiple entities, and you capture those synergies. The third is around building on that wellness tourism so you can cater to the future demand for that segment. And lastly is enhancing that luxury tourism offering, both in terms of the product that you offer and the experience that you offer. That brings us to a close. So thank you so much for your time. Appreciate it.